Okay, I just recently watched Girl in the Crawlspace, and I was a little surprised because I was expecting it to be a scary movie based on the title and the picture, and it wasn't scary. There were suspenseful parts of the movie and a little bit of a twist. What was your idea with the movie? How did this whole idea come about?
Well, I had sold my first screenplay to the direct-to-video market back in 1999, and for about 20 years I wrote a ton of screenplays for the for that market, for the home video market and so on. I probably sold 30 or 40, and probably a dozen or so had been turned into movies that you could rent and buy and see streaming and what have you. So come around probably around 2017, I was sort of in a spot where I hadn't really been asked to do anything in a while, and especially not anything I wanted to do. And I decided that I would just write a screenplay for myself, like a movie I would like to see. And then I decided, because my background, my day job background, has been in television production and video production and so on. And I thought, maybe I could call in some favors and make my own movie and just make the movie I want to make. And then go to conventions and sell it at a card table and just be content, with my life. So that's what I did. As I wrote a screenplay for myself that I wanted to, something I'd want to see. And I wrote it thinking that I could shoot it at my own house in rural Indiana and hopefully call on some friends that I had made in the B-movie industry to help me. And that is what happened. So in the spring of 2018, I gathered up a group of friends, people I'd worked with on other movies, because I've written a lot of screenplays, but I've also been a production assistant for some friends' movies and so on. So I just gathered everybody up that I kind of gathered a tribe, and we shot it at my house over about 5 days. And that's how it started. I ended up being very, very fortunate for a big distributor, ITN, purchased it. And then on top of that, Mill Creek, which is a very big distributor of their own rights, bought the rights from them. And so my original plan was just to sell it at conventions at a table. And, I made a movie just personally for myself. And instead what happened is it ended up in Walmart and Family Video and lots of streaming services. And, now it came out in February of 20. I'm not saying it ushered in the apocalypse, but that is when it came out.
Right.
And it has run its full cycle. Now you can find it. People are sending me pictures of it at Dollar Tree. You can get it for $1 in these big giant bins, and that's great. I mean, it's run its full life cycle, and it went much, much farther and wider than I ever expected, considering, I mostly did it because I hadn't been offered anything, and or anything I wanted to do for a long time. And so I just gathered up friends and acquaintances and shot that over 5 days and hoped for the best. And I was very, very fortunate with the wide distribution that it got, considering I wrote it to be very personal. It's about a guy in a canvas mask chasing around poor Aaron Ryan, but it's also really supposed to be about, how arts can save people, that live in rural areas, and how you can have a life of the mind and be from a rural area. And that's really what I was trying to show with it. And also to show, even people that shoot in the Midwest, a lot of times they try to make their movies look kind of generic or kind of like California, what have you. But I really wanted mine centered around Indiana roots, like you would know where it was set at. And the other thing I've always thought about screenwriting is, if you want to watch this movie, you probably would also like some of the other things that I like. So, this movie's pretty heavy with role-playing game culture. Which,
I was going to ask you about that, because there was a heavy role-playing aspect to the movie, and I found it interesting. Now, the game that they play, is that something you made up for the movie? So that, yeah, okay.
Yeah. My old gaming group from when I was a younger guy we called ourselves Outcast Swords was the name of the gaming group. So I named the name of the game. I couldn't use Dungeons and Dragons.
Sure.
So I called that is based on, I actually, not that anyone cared, but I actually wrote up all the character sheets, and I set up because I knew that gaming people would see and know if it wasn't legit. So a lot of things I wrote in there, the way the little map is set up and everything, it was supposed to reflect like they were really playing, because I thought if I just half-assed that, people who were gaming people would know.
Oh, absolutely.
So I really spent a lot of time on that. But I also talked about just DIY culture, and zines, and my second movie has a lot to do with outsider art, and so, just things that I'm interested in, I thought other people are interested in if they're watching this movie. So I tried to raise a lot of flags to people that might be interested in the same kind of ideas. But yeah, I think a lot of people are surprised it has such a core element of role-playing gaming, but that was, I wrote it again for myself, not for other people to, because I've always written for other people. I've always, I always remind myself when I've written for people, it's not my baby. I'm delivering somebody else's baby. So, you can't really be thin-skinned when people want to do rewrites and changes and all these things, or you're writing for a specific core. I mean, especially in B-movies, a lot of to be honest, I don't think in all of these years, which is now 20 years, I don't know that I have never sold a spec script. Like, I've never sold a script that I just came up with by myself. In fact, most of the movies I've written already had a title and sometimes even a poster. And, when you write, especially with some of the friends that I've made, and I've written several movies for the B-movie director Mark Polonia, who's very, very prolific. I've written several for Henrik Kuto, who's an Ohio filmmaker who's very, very prolific. As a matter of fact, he's the director of photography on my movie, which he came on as a producer and director of photography as a friend. And so we, when you write for those people, you write for people, you kind of know who they're going to cast and who they have around, and what their locations are going to be, and so you end up writing knowing what people have. And so I used that when I wrote my own movie. I know what my house looks like, obviously, and I kind of wrote for certain people that I had met through the years, and I was very, very, very lucky that all those people agreed to be in it, to come to rural Indiana and be in it, because I cast somewhat widely into Ohio, where I met quite a few of the people working with Henrik Kuto. So my three main people in the movie, the girl in the crawl space herself, the therapist, and her husband, are all Dayton area actors. And I was very fortunate. They all agreed to come here and stay at the house and shoot. The sheriff in the movie is a very, very old friend of mine, back from my public access television days. And I always knew he's a great actor. He does a lot of theater. He has his own little acting troupe, and they put on radio-style plays. In the community center that we actually shot, 80% of the movie was shot at my house, but the community center where the role-playing game group meets, that is where they perform their own plays and radio shows and things like that. So his name's Tom Cherry, and he's an old friend of mine, and I always knew if I wrote a movie, I'd write a part for him. So he played the sheriff, and he was able to put me in touch with his acting troupe. So almost all of the people that play the role-playing game group are all people that I actually met through Tom, and they were very comfortable because we shot at the place where they perform all the time, and that helped quite a bit. I was very lucky to write it with particular people and things in mind, and able to execute that with those people. It was really rewarding in that way. And then when the day that we did the director's commentary for the movie for ITN, which was basically the day my producer Henrik Kudo sent forth the deliverables. The question was, okay, what do we have next? Well, I didn't have anything next. I was planning on making one movie to prove that, I could do it, make my own movie. I wasn't planning on going from there, or I hadn't thought about it. So the very day that we did the director's commentary for the DVD, which was January of 19, we started kicking around. We actually went out and walked Henrik's dogs. We recorded at his house in Dayton, and then we walked his dogs and started talking about what we might do. And I went home that day and started writing my next movie, Scarecrow County. And then in March of that year, so just a couple months later, we were shooting it. And again, we shot it over the course of a week. I made a much more expansive movie with a lot more people and a lot more locations. I just didn't add time or money, but I made a much bigger movie. And because that's the rub, you know, whenever you make something, everyone's always asking you, what do you have next? And I didn't have anything next. So we put that together very, very quickly, and ITN grabbed that one up too. And that came out, so Crawlspace came out in February of 20, and then Scarecrow County came out in October of 20.
Okay, so Scarecrow County could be one of our next movies that we watch then.
Yeah, it's also available, like it's free on Tubi, I think is the free place for it.
Okay, I rented Crawlspace off of Amazon, so
Scarecrow County you can see, it has the same, because I put it together so quickly, I used all the same cast and crew, and just kind of moved the parts around. So you'll see a lot of familiar places and faces from the first movie.
Now, I noticed at the end of Crawlspace, you may have left it open for a possible sequel. I don't want to give any spoilers, but...
Two funny things about that. One, the ending of the movie, even when we were shooting it, Erin, who plays the girl in the Crawlspace, didn't really know what she was supposed to be doing. Like, she didn't quite understand what was going on.
Right.
In the very last scene. And then in the credits, you know, I put the girl in the Crawlspace will return. But I meant that it was sort of a meta joke, because, you know, at the end of all the James Bond movies, it always says James Bond will return and blah, blah, blah. So I did that as a joke, really.
Okay.
A lot of people, if I was really going to write a sequel, and I really didn't have any plans for that. Just like in the beginning, the very first thing you see, Erin Ryan is the girl, you know, and that was supposed to be a throwback to like 70s style movies.
Sure.
My first movie, my genres, you know, I mean, growing up, my influences were 60s, 70s movies, whereas, you know, I think a lot of people working in B movies, their influence are like 80s, 90s horror movies. I was already, you know, especially late 80s, I was already an adult. I wasn't really, my time of being influenced was kind of over. So it's funny because in working with Henrik Kuto, who's in his 30s, who was my producer on the film, you know, his influences are totally different than mine. I mean, I'm very much in the auteur theory of the 70s kind of cinema. So he, you know, he used old lenses. You know, we did a lot of long takes, wide shots. You know, I like to cut it in a way that was a 70s style. And, you know, that wasn't really his influence. And so when we did the next movie, Scarecrow County, I said, I'm going to make a movie for you. And so it has a lot of blue gels, fog machines, Dutch angles.
Right.
It's much more of an 80s, 90s. It's still more cerebral. It's not a complete, like a hack and slash. But my first one is definitely more of a slow burn, kind of a cerebral movie. But it does have a more, you know, because of marketing, it has a more aggressive. What I actually wanted to, when I wrote the script, I called it The Girl with the Grindhouse Heart. And I thought that had more of an art movie title, and nobody liked that title. So
right.
And you know, the poster art also more reflects that, you know, more of a horror movie style. But I've noticed it's been marketed a little bit like I noticed the distributor put out, like in the style of Kiss the Girls, which is more of a thriller movie.
Right.
So it has been marketed a bit more as a thriller, but to be honest, I think because my entire IMDb profile is all horror movies, I think people were just expecting I was going to come at it as a horror film, where my idea was I would start a movie where other movies end. Like, this is not a spoiler because you can watch the first 30 seconds and see this, but I mean, she escapes at the beginning of the movie. That
right.
would be like, you know, you don't really see anything that happened to her in these years of captivity and torture and all that. You don't see any of that. It basically, it's about everything that happens when she escapes.
Right.
It's the plot of, not everything that led to her capture and then what all happened to her while she was, a prisoner of a psychopath. So you don't. It's all implied and inferred, and that was my thinking, is I wanted to do something that started when other movies would basically end. She's the final girl running away at the end, but that's really where the movie starts and not ends. So,
right.
an entire horror movie with only one drop of blood, and actually no one dies in it. And I think all the killing and all the gruesome things you hear about actually happens before the movie starts. And I think that was a little bit surprising to people.
No, but I mean, it made sense. It made sense with the missing kids and all of that. So I don't think you needed to show that to understand the storyline. And again, when I went to watch it, I was expecting to be scared. And it just because, oh, someone's in a crawl space, creepy, right? But then when we watched it, I'm like, this is completely different. But it was still different in a good way. It showed her recovery from her trauma as opposed to her trauma. Because you just see a lot of movies about that.
Good creeps in there and surprise. I remember when I showed it at the Farmland Community Center where we shot it, just sort of do a little thing for them. It's kind of a thank you. And we had a lot of people there. And my mom and dad were there. And at the end, when there's kind of a big reveal, my mom almost fell off the chair. So I was really happy. But there is a couple of little shocks in it, but it is supposed to be more of a slow burn. But, my idea was, there's supposedly this, the serial killer of children. And I was sort of like, well, that's the Indiana brain drain, right? We're losing people and kids move away. And that's what it was supposed to sort of represent. And, they live in this dying town. And the villain, they have something kind of festering there. And, I think that represents a lot of these small towns that are dying off and people moving away. And, that's what it was supposed to show. Like, it's funny because when I've screened this for people outside of, Indiana people understand the movie, but I've screened it in other places, Iowa City, I've screened it in Ohio. And it's funny, some of the questions that people have asked me, like one is, did you empty the streets before you shot that? No, they were empty.
Yeah, that's normal.
Stuff like that. In my second movie, Scarecrow County, a basketball team plays a big, like, adult, these guys that were basketball players, as now they're adults and they're kind of facing something they did when they were a teen. And people have asked me, is basketball that popular? Because, like, the guy who's one of the stars of the basketball team is now the mayor of the town. And somebody asked me at a screening one time, is basketball that popular in Indiana? Yeah, it's that popular.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, so it's just funny that the perspective of people that didn't grow up. I think the other funny thing that people have asked me a lot is you see Aaron Ryan near the beginning of the movie walks on a cakewalk, and people just don't know what that thing is.
Right.
That was painted on the road in Farmland, Indiana, where I lived, and my dog actually won a cake on that cakewalk once. So I tried, and that little town park is there, and all of that. So I did try to throw in, a lot of cultural references, and it is funny what people outside of our area, like people I've screened it for around here, are like, oh yeah, this, that, and the other, but people outside of Indiana don't always understand what it is. But I also am like, well, I didn't make it for everybody, so if you don't understand it, not everything's supposed to be made for LA and New York audiences,
Right.
So we all these Midwest people with their own cultural signifiers. And they don't often, even people that make Midwest movies sometimes try to mask, where they're making their film. And I did not want to do that in writing my own movie. And, I tried to put a lot of personal things in there, like the gaming, my interest in spaghetti westerns, curiously plays a big part in the movie, stuff like that. So.
Well, I seriously appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. And please keep us posted on all of your newest endeavors so we can keep up with you. We can find you on Facebook?
I'm on Facebook at John Oak Dalton, Instagram the same, Twitter the same. Those are my three main channels. I do, not so much in the last year, but I have a film blog that I keep at John Oak Dalton at blogspot.com. You can definitely see everything that's happened in the last couple of years, but like everybody else, you know, COVID has really, I was a day away from starting a new film. Like literally the night before, I was making the sandwiches and everything for lunch the next day on the set.
Oh, wow.
And we had, so we canceled just the night before we were supposed to start on a new film, and that was in March of 20, obviously.
Yes.
So I have not picked that back up, and but I'm vaccinated now, so we'll see, you know, what the future brings. My new film was more of a thriller, and I was casting a little wider with some new people, and so it would kind of have a different look and feel than my first two that I did kind of back to back together. So we'll see if I get to that, or whether what exactly the environment's going to be for people. I wrote during the last year. I wrote 3 or 4 scripts for other people. I still looked at my screenwriting. Definitely one of those was sidelined by COVID during production and only got about halfway through. The other ones I think have been produced but haven't come out yet. So we'll see. I know people at all levels have been struggling with production right now. So I don't know. I probably won't even think about it till later in the summer. But I'm still going to work on scripts. I can sit here and do that without endangering anybody, and then we'll kind of see from there.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing what you have in store.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for asking.
Absolutely.